Good morning. How's everyone doing? All right. So if we can at this time, I'm going to have everyone stand for the singing of the national anthem by Sergeant Johnson with the North Carolina National Guard.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's regular double bird singing air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave,
Outstanding. Sergeant Johnson, thanks for getting us started. Love it. All right, so welcome guests, friends, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for 2019 NC Strive Central East Conference here at NC State. So also, welcome here. This is our home here with the Wolfpack, so welcome to NC State. Hopefully you didn't have too much of a difficult time navigating the parking situation, so thank you. All right. My name is Nick Drake. I'm the Director of Military and Veteran Services here at NC State University. Again, our office, as many of you do know, provides service to our military and veteran students here on campus. So as they transition in, matriculate, persist on to graduation, and then ultimately move out into the workforce. So with that said, I want to go ahead and just touch on a few housekeeping items before we call up our first individual here, Dr. Mullen. Breakout sessions, so you may have looked at the maps already or walked around the area. So breakout sessions are going to be directly behind us. So you're going to actually move down this hallway here, and we have 3 ballrooms set up. Each of them are going to have the session outside of the door, and they will have a session monitor. When you go into the session, we do have surveys that we would love for you to fill out so that we can get feedback on the individual presentations themselves. Along with, at the end of the day, we're going to have an overall program evaluation. Again, this helps us understand what we can continue to do better at the state level to provide these services and supports to our veterans and military families. Exhibitors. Thank you so much, exhibitors, for coming. We have 36 today, so we have a full house. That is full capacity of what we can hold. So again, we appreciate what you all bring and the value you bring. With that said, I challenge each of you to make sure that you're engaging with the vendors as you walk through the exhibitors, learning a little bit about the services that they provide and seeing how you may potentially connect with them in the future. Lunch will be downstairs, so that will be after we have the keynote here. We have breakout session 1 and 2, and then immediately following we will have lunch directly below us. You can go down the stairs on either end, and we'll be having it at One Earth outside, and then there's some also seating indoors as well. Bathrooms, so the restroom facilities are going to be right immediately out this door if you're in this area. There are also adjacent bathrooms over here next to the elevator. I do want to thank our sponsors. So without the sponsors, this absolutely would not be possible. So we've got them listed here on the board, but again, thank you sponsors for everything that you've done to help us put this on. And then lastly, the planning committee. So this was a big undertaking, and as some of you know, you are at the state level steering committee for the NC Strive events annually, that there is a lot of work and time that goes into putting on these conferences. So obviously great leadership at the top by Dr. Lee Fang, Susan Watkins, and Jeff Smith. I know Susan and Jeff are here. Susan will be coming up in a few minutes. So again, they keep us in line, making sure that we're moving forward and doing what we're supposed to. And then secondly, I don't want to start going into too many names because I don't want to forget folks, but a lot of them you've already interacted with out there at the registration desk, through the parking, and then also just in terms of being here to greet folks. Two that I do want to mention specifically are Daniel Hackley and Eileen, so Dr. Eileen Haas. They have been exceptionally instrumental in making sure that the logistics for today were put together and put in motion. So thank you to everyone. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you our first, if I pull this out, our first speaker is going to be Dr. Mike Mullen. So Dr. Mullen is our Vice Chancellor and Dean here for the Division of Academic and Student Affairs here at NC State. In that role, he provides leadership for the academic, co-curricular, and extracurricular support and programming for all students here at NC State. He is also a professor in the Department of Soil Science, undergraduate education at the university, before Dr. Mullen came to NC State, he served as the Associate Provost for undergraduate education at the University of Kentucky, go Big Blue, that's my alma mater, from 2009 to 2012, and as the Associate Dean in the university's College of Agriculture from 2004 to 2009. Before joining the University of Kentucky in 2002, Dr. Mullen spent 13 years as a professor in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, Sciences and Natural Resources at the University of Tennessee. He has received several teaching awards at the university and national levels, and he was named as the NC State College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Outstanding Alumnus in October of 2015. So with that said, please help me welcome Dr. Mullen.
Thank you, Nick. That was a very generous introduction. Good morning. That's pretty good. Let's do it again. Good morning. Good morning. That's better. Thank you. Sergeant Johnson, beautiful job. That was inspiring. Thank you for your singing of the national anthem this morning. Again, I am Mike Mullen, and on behalf of Chancellor Randy Woodson and Provost Arden and the rest of the faculty, staff, and students here at NC State, it's a pleasure to welcome you here today for the Central East North Carolina Strive Conference. It's really a pleasure to have all of you here today to explore, network, and succeed in your efforts to support our student veterans and their families as they work to complete their work towards their educational goals and dreams of getting a degree. Before I continue, I think I'd be remiss if I did not mention that today is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. That day when U.S. and Allied troops landed in Normandy and turned the tide in the battle against the Nazis in World War II. And now, 75 years later, we are talking about how to improve our service to student veterans and their dependents, to better serve those who protect and serve day in and day out. To all of you who have served, thank you, in memory of the sacrifice of others that day and the sacrifices each and every one of you have made over the period of your lifetime. So thank you for your service. NC State is dedicated to the success of every student on our campus. All of our students work hard and achieve great results. We provide a variety of programs across the campus that meet our students where they are and meet our students to help them achieve their goals. And one of those is our Military and Veteran Services Office and our Military and Veterans Center. We're very proud of the fact that we have that here. At any given time here at NC State, we have about 800 student veterans and another 1,500 or so dependents who are receiving services through our center. And so we're very proud of that. We strive to provide each of them with services they need for success, much like we do all of our students here at NC State. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. NC State is a military-friendly campus, and we're recognized as such year after year. And I think this is also borne out by our history and by our present work. This university has produced over 60 generals and flag officers over the last century. And that's a figure that trails only the service academies and institutions with corps of cadet programs. So among U.S. colleges and universities, we produce more than any other than the Corps Cadet universities around the nation. A few examples of these leaders include retired Army Generals Hugh Shelton and Ray Odierna, both of whom served as Army Chiefs of Staff. Major General William C. Lee, generally considered the father of the airborne, and General Maxwell R. Thurman, who was Vice Chief of Staff in the Army in the mid-1980s. And here on our own campus, I don't know if they are here with us today, but retired Navy Rear Admiral Benny Suggs serves as our Associate Vice Chancellor for Alumni Affairs, and retired Navy Rear Admiral Doug Morton, who's also a graduate of NC State, is our Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities here at NC State. So we have indeed a proud history of producing leaders. Our long history is also commemorated in our most visible and cherished symbol here at NC State, our Memorial Bell Tower, which honors NC State alumni who were killed during World War I. How many of you have seen the bell tower? Perfect. We are actually in the middle or beginning some work to renovate the bell tower. Who knew that a bell tower doesn't have bells in it? So, yeah. So we received a generous donation, and we are now in the process of getting ready to really kind of retrofit with bells and to completely renovate the entire structure and to make the grounds into a really special place. So come back in a couple of years and see how that works out. We also have strong and effective ROTC units on our campus representing the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy and Marines, with about 340 students across all of those areas. Our students in our ROTC programs are routinely recognized for their outstanding academic and military performance, and many go on to distinguished careers. And finally, in 2016, in an effort to truly serve our student veterans better, we established the Office of Military and Veteran Services, as I mentioned before, and the Military and Veterans Resource Center. The center opened in November 2016 under the leadership of Nick Drake, who you've already met. And Nick serves in the North Carolina Army National Guard and has done an exceptional job of building a center that we're very proud of. Thank you for your work, Nick. Our center serves, of course, discharged and retired veterans, active duty military, members of the National Guard and Reserve components, spouses and dependents of military and veteran students, and our Gold Star family members. The goals of the center are to enable our student veterans to transition from the military into our campus, to get the services they need, to graduate with a degree from NC State, and then to transition from campus into the workforce after they've achieved that goal. I'm really proud of the work we do to support our student veterans here at NC State, and this conference is but one example of our commitment to our veterans. And I know that today you are all going to learn and grow together as you work to best serve all of your student veterans. It's a real pleasure to have well over 300 of you here today from 42 universities, including 13 schools from the North Carolina system. Welcome to NC State. I wish you great success today and always. And if you've been around NC State often, you know that we always close with "Go Pack." Take care.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Mullen. We really appreciate your time today. All right, so our next speaker, we're going to bring up Mrs. Susan Watkins, who is the Vision 6 Lead Program Manager for the Durham VA Healthcare System. And Susan's going to give us an overview of the NC Strive Conference.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the short person up here. I'm really excited to be back, and I would love for my daughter to be here. She's an undergrad and graduate from NC State. She got her doctorate of veterinary medicine here. Wouldn't it be nice for her to sit in the audience and see this today? So we're here to talk about NC Strive, and all of you are here because the initiative is expanding. It's growing and it's helping more veterans and their families, and that's exactly what this initiative is about. As Nick said, we are all across the state now, and if you look at this slide, it can tell you what we did last year in terms of all of the programs that we offered. We go into the mountains, we go down to Charlotte, we come to the coast, and we also stay in the central area. Last year was Wake Tech, this year we're at NC State, and we've surpassed expectations of the number of people who are learning about how to help our veterans. It's important that we comprehensively talk about veteran success because coming home from war deployment is harder than going. And we know that for years working with our veterans. This initiative was born out of the lack of success because the veterans were coming home, their GI dollars were highly sought, but their success in school was not the most primary initiative. So we all collectively got together and decided that if we educate everyone as to why this is important, we would be able to succeed. We always include behavioral health because emotionally, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, all of those things do exist. Not everyone has them, but helping our veterans succeed in a classroom as a more mature veteran is part of what this initiative does. So 4 regions, 1 statewide planning committee, lots of meetings, and we get the job done. This is Dr. Lee Fang. She's been co-chair with me since inception. I sat down with her after the governor's working group saying, we ought to be able to do something. We ought to be able to get colleges to hear that they have true expertise in their classrooms, but they're not helping them succeed. And that's how this initiative was born. So we are always sharing best practices. We're always bringing volunteers into this initiative because without these volunteers, we wouldn't succeed. The governor's working group has been a steadfast support to us, as has been the Department of Health and Human Services. So that's where Dr. Lee Fang comes out of. But it's important that you know that you can find anything we do on the Governor Working Group webpage, and we've been doing this for years. We're not keeping our secrets. We want this initiative to expand, not only North Carolina, but Virginia as well, and any other state or area that would like to partner and help our veterans succeed. So as I said, the Department of Health and Human Services is always talking about behavioral health and recovery, success in life, as well with addictions and other concerns. So they're a logical partner to support our veterans in higher education. This is my team, so I get to say a little bit about why this is important. We're in transition care management. We work at the VA. At every VA, there's a team like this that is willing to help a veteran have access to care, get into care where they need, get to the closest location, and support them. Certainly, we transfer veterans out of the DOD to the VA. Those are ill and injured veterans, but anyone on your campus that's struggling, transition care management is where you send them. We are experts in eligibility. We can get you linked to care really seamlessly, and it's important that you partner with a team like this close to your location. Now, I used our picture because, see, I'm a little biased. These guys work hard. They're a small team, but they're mighty, and they're always everywhere out in the community trying to expand education and information. So there's Nick. He was famous before he was famous. Daniel as well. This is one of the most important classes that we offered. It was so well received, and the logic of it was like, gosh, why didn't we figure this out before? It's how do you make money work? Going to school is expensive. Being able to juggle school books, a family, and probably a job is a task in itself. But these two gentlemen provided an educational seminar that was the top rated of all seminars. So we want to thank them, and also look what they've done this year, trying to excel and continue to expand the effort. Down there on the right, you can see we have almost surpassed that attendance by being in this room today. So I want to thank you for coming out, being a part of this. We have traveled over the state. We will go wherever people want to hear about this program. And I think that that's important. We're always using community partners. And we travel from up in the Asheville mountain areas, and we travel all the way to the coast. So we hope this initiative will continue to expand and surpass. The top picture is the student panel. If you sit in on that today, you are truly going to learn a lot of information about why coming home is more difficult than going. So I want you to make sure you take that in. They always motivate me, keep me going on this initiative, and make me feel like what we're doing is working. So one of the things that we see happening is more research is happening about veterans going back to school. And I think that's important. And if you go around the displays here in the auditorium, you will see that they are also tracking veterans' success. Knowing that we are making a difference, getting the GI Bill into school, be it with the veteran or with their dependents, and that they succeed, is part of where this initiative is going. Again, more breakouts of the disciplines that are using the GI Bill and where they're located. So we are trying to use research to funnel where we try to target, getting people like you to come in the door and learn how to help our veterans. So this is this year. As you can see, it's June 6th and we're all here, and I'm so happy to see you. You are going to have a great day. You're going to learn so much. And don't forget to visit all the vendors, because they are just as passionate as Nick, Daniel, NC State, and the rest of us. So we hope that you have a wonderful day today, and know that this is all volunteer initiative, and that without our volunteers, we couldn't do a thing. So you're part of what's going to carry this mission forward. We're going to need you. Not to say that this is an easy job, it's a time-consuming job, but everybody comes to the table willingly. So we want you to be a part of that ripple effect of success for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. All right, so our next speaker, we have the distinct pleasure of introducing Mr. Paul Cruz, who was appointed the director of the Durham VA healthcare system effective March 19th, 2018. In this role, Mr. Cruz oversees the delivery of healthcare to nearly 70,000 veterans at 10 sites of care across eastern and central North Carolina. Before joining the the Durham VA team, Mr. Cruz served as interim director of the VA Western New York healthcare system since October of 2017. Prior to that, he served as deputy director of the San Francisco VA healthcare system, overseeing non-clinical operations from June 2016 through October of 2017, and as the associate director from January of 16 to June of 16. He previously served as the Associate Director of the Tennessee Valley VA Healthcare System in Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee is board certified in healthcare management and a veteran, or he is board certified as a healthcare management and a veteran of the United States Navy. It's our pleasure to welcome Mr. Cruz.
All right, I'll try this again. Good morning, everybody. Hi, there. Hey, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Hey, well, it's great to be here. I'm very excited to be here with you guys today. As Nick just said, I am Paul Cruz. I'm the director of the Durham VA healthcare system. which, as he said, covers about 70,000 lives or 70,000 veterans that we provide services to just in our market, which runs basically from Alamance County all the way down to Morehead City out on the coast. We have nearly 4,000 staff in our health system, which is a very complex tertiary, actually a quaternary, what we call quaternary care system or hospital for North Carolina and Virginia as well. And we actually pull in people from across the East Coast for specialty services. And what we do is, and what I strive for every day is to ensure that we provide safe care for our veterans, that that care is given in a timely manner, that we are efficient in the services that we provide, that the services we provide are effective due to what it is that we want them to do, and that they're equal, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your race is, your gender, rural or urban, that you have access to that same level of health care. And then what is most important to me, and I think to all of us it is that it's veteran-centered. We're doing things at the veteran's best interest. We put the veteran at the very center of what we do, and not the government or not our physicians or whatever it is. The veteran's there, and that's the person that we're making those choices for. So that's just a little bit about the Durham VA healthcare system, give you an orientation. We have 10 sites of care. I could get into all kinds of statistics, but I really don't want to talk about that today. What I do want to ask real quickly is how many, by a show of hands, how many veterans are in the audience today? Active duty or military? Wow, okay, a large number. Okay, great. How many of you have relatives, living relatives who are veterans in the audience today? Okay, so I've probably covered just about everybody in this group. So first off, for those of you who are veterans or in the military, I want to say thank you for your service to our country. It's greatly appreciated. And I think it's really timely, that we're talking about what we're doing for veterans on this day. As Dr. Mullen said, reminded us this morning, is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Unbelievable. I get the honor to go down to another event right after this down at the Capitol for the awarding of the Bronze Star to several folks that were at Normandy that are still alive with us today, soldiers that were there for the invasion. So I know Susan and Nick all got me prepared for what we were going to be talking about, the group that I was going to talk about today, and I wanted to share a little bit with you about how important this mission is and what's going on. So as you heard Nick say, I'm a Navy veteran. Any Navy in the house? Oh, a couple. Okay, great. Okay, cool. It's mostly Army and Marine Corps around here. All right. But hey, wait, I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy, which buys me a little bit with some Marines. They were my bestest friends. And I worked for the 10th Mountain Division. Anybody know where that is? It's that really warm place up in upstate New York. Lived there for 65 years, and ooh, to the top there. But I was in the Navy. I got out of the Navy in 1995. I was what they called medically discharged. I had a condition, they didn't quite know what it was, but it wasn't compatible with military service. And so I was discharged out. And cut a long story short, within a year of getting out, I actually lost my right lower leg. So I'm an amputee. It's fine, it's been 30 years. I'm over it now. But just to talk a little bit about, we talk about that transitional period and what it's like. So for all of you, and I know there's so many of you that are either veterans or attached with veterans, you go into the military and everything's done for you every day, it seems almost. You have a plan of the day. You know what's happening every day. You've got a house you've got a roof over your head. You've got at least 3, well, they call them meals, but you at least got some food, right? So you had that covered, and everything was just all right there for you. And then when you get discharged, when you transition, yeah, there's a transition assistance, I think there is. 30 years ago, there was what was called TAP. I don't even remember anything about it because all I was thinking about is I'm getting out. And I think that's where the VA presentation was. But, so there's that transitional period, and you get out, and all of that's gone. It's like all of a sudden you're on an island to yourself. You don't have those people picking on you every morning or giving you a hard time, and you're out there going, okay, where are we going to go now? and you're trying to understand what to do. And I know in my case, and I hear it and see it a lot every day, a lot of our soldiers and airmen, a lot of our military veterans come out of this with injuries. Some of them physical, some of them mental, but bottom line with injuries. And you're trying to realize, how do I deal with those situations? It's new to me. I've got these new injuries. I've got these new issues. And I need to get health care. I need to get stuff. I need to know, how do I function in life now? How do I get myself oriented to get back up on the road and move forward? So that adds to that other issue of, I'm out in a new world, I've got this issue I'm not used to, it's new to me, and how do I move forward? And hopefully a lot of folks, because they were smart enough, that they took part of the GI Bill. That's what I'm hoping. I know when I went through boot camp, I won't say when, but when I went through boot camp, I paid, it was going to kill me too, because it was $100 a month for 12 months to get me the GI Bill. Is it still the same for anybody? It's more now? It's nothing? It's free? Oh, man. All right, the guys these days have it easy. No, but, so it's $1,200 that I invested, they took out of my check actually, to make sure that I had educational benefits. And most folks I knew did that as well, and I'm so very thankful for that. Because when I got out, I was able to get back into school. And it gave me something to do. It gave me a schedule, it gave me a structure, it gave me somewhere to go. And to move forward. Now I'll have to say, it was interesting, when I went to Texas State University down in Texas, I'm from Texas. They didn't have a military vet center. I had I think it was a tuition assistance program office that said, oh, we'll help you with your GI Bill. It was, how do I get your money, is what it seemed like to me. So we didn't have all this, and this is just so amazing to me. But, so then you're getting out. Just the experience of a veteran, now you're getting into college. Guess what? Majority of the kids in the college are anywhere from 18 years old to 20-somethings, early 20s. I was going into college at age 30. I was going to college with people that mom and dad were still paying for everything, and I was trying to figure out how in the world I was going to put food on the table. I did have my GI Bill, but it's a tough job. And back then, we didn't have the opportunity to get together with folks. There were no veterans groups. I was looking and searching for a place that I could go to have that sense of camaraderie, to be back into that to help me move forward. So those are valuable things to have when you're trying to adapt to a medical issue, you're trying to make sure that you're providing for yourself, and that you're capturing the knowledge that you have in students, in the school. How many faculty members do we happen to have today? How many people are involved with teaching too? Okay, a few. I do really want to push and ask that you do tap into those veterans. They're more senior student usually in your class. They've had a lot of experiences, a lot of life experiences. But we as veterans can bring a lot of great dialogue into issues and topics in any course. And make sure you push them, because that's what they're used to being done, is pushing them. So I just want to bring that out and just talk about some of the concerns and how important this program is. You know, for us, during the VA healthcare system, and for the VA overall, this population of veterans is most important. We are at a time of transition. We are seeing different campaign populations that are dwindling and new ones that are rising. For right now, the 20 to 40-year-old veteran population is what we are trying to focus more of our attention on. We know a day is gone where people are retired, most of our people aren't working. We know that our new veterans are working, they have families. We have to adapt our systems and our programs to be able to ensure that we provide services that meet their needs and meet them where they are. And most of them are working or going to school. And North Carolina is really special to get here. It's a little different than San Francisco. I haven't found the coast yet. I need to get out there. I hear, no, never mind. But I do want to say is what's important about North Carolina, which is so exciting about North Carolina, is that 20% of the United States military, active duty military, is in this state. So those people down at that little place called Fort Bragg, North Carolina, there's a few folks down there, and then they're in Camp Lejeune, Seymour Johnson Air Force. and out there at Cherry Point, or the major, not to mention all of the National Guard organizations, other structures. And so it's really important for us in North Carolina, our academic institutions, and us as the Department of Veteran Affairs to connect with those veterans as they transition. And I want to connect with them before they even get out so that we can try to communicate all the great services that are out there. We want our transitioning veterans to feel and know that we're here as a place that they can come to our transition care management program, to any of our facilities throughout the world, the state, and even here on campus, that we're here for them. And our ultimate goal for our veterans is to ensure that they're safe, they're healthy, good well-being, and are successful in their educational pursuits. And that's what we're looking for. So nobody in the VA, I believe, or nobody outside of the VA knows veterans better than the VA, I will say, from a medical standpoint. We deal with this, we've been dealing with this for many a year. And we understand the trials and tribulations of war, of military service, and what it is that our veterans need. And we're working really hard to improve those services to make sure that every veteran has the care they need, where they need it, when they need it. Today, besides being D-Day, is another important day for the Department of Veteran Affairs. Today is the first day of new legislation, which is called the Mission Act, which is really to ensure that we provide the services that veterans need when and where they need it. Up on our table up front, up to the side, I think is where it's located over here. We've dropped off a few, don't have a lot, but dropped off a few. These are hot off the press, came in last night. It's healthcare options through the VA. It's a pamphlet that talks about some of the new services, but I want to hit just a couple of them here this morning. The first one is to make sure that veterans have access to timely care. Our central office, the Department of Veteran Affairs, has set an expectation that we see any new veteran who comes in, we get them into primary care within 20 days for an appointment, for a new patient appointment. And that they not have to drive greater than 30 minutes to get to that appointment. So we know we can't do that alone. So we have to do that with community partners. And so we are partnering with thousands of providers through North Carolina and millions across, well not millions, but tens of thousands across the United States to establish care for those veterans who cannot, where we cannot meet that requirement of 20 days or 30 minutes. For specialty care, our targets are 28 days and 60 minutes. So we're trying to make sure that people can get into that service. Luckily here in Durham, in general, we are right below the 20 days for primary care. We're actually at about 16 days for mental health. And we're about 28 days for specialty services. But we know that about 20% of our veterans will probably choose to get their care outside. I try to encourage everybody not to, because I think we provide a better service than they do. But that's what we're trying to do. Those are some of the standards that have come out, and we're finding that things are rolling out well today. A new benefit that I think is very important is a new urgent care benefit. So veterans have complained in the past that they really, when they didn't want to have to go all the way into a hospital or a clinic to go get something for a cough or an eye irritation, earache, or something like that. So a new benefit has been established for any eligible veteran, by eligible that you have to have been seen in the VA in the last 24 months or 2 years, that you can go to an urgent care center. It has to be a participating urgent care center, and that you can go to www.va.gov, type in care, and it will pop up. Look at the Mission Act, and it will pop up sites of care. And if it's a participating VA participating urgent care clinic, you can get services there for free for up to 3 visits. The 4th visit, it's a $30 copay. But that's a new option that's out there. There's some new changes coming to our caregiver support program, which will be opening that up to a broader population, as well as some changes in how we're going to integrate peers. So we want to have peer support program that's integrated into our primary care to have fellow veterans there to help. Yes, we already have 30% of our organization are veterans, but we know that we need more to be right there. So it's important for us as well to ensure that we get the care where they need it. And that having been a college student 30 years ago, went through, used the GI Bill, made it all the way up through graduate school. But the problem I always had was, how do I miss a class, or how do I get to an appointment without trying to miss a class or getting somewhere? So we get that. So we're in the early stages here in the Durham VA healthcare system of actually working and reaching out, especially we're starting with because of Drake. Nick, because we're working to see how we can put services here on this campus, be it in a part of a room or be it a van that's out here, but that we can provide a presence here on this campus. It's going to take us some time to get things worked out, but we know that that's a mission that we can accomplish. Once we start here, we're going to transfer that out across in our catchment area where we have large numbers of veterans to make sure that we can provide services, meet the veteran where the veteran is instead of trying to make them come into us. Using a lot of new programs as well as video on demand and a lot of different things where we can get out there and make this convenient as we can to give that care. So I probably talked way more than I should have, and I apologize. But I just wanted you to understand how important this program is. As a veteran who went through school trying to navigate the complex system after the military, you think military is complex, nothing as bad as once you get out. We need help. I'm first to say, we need that help to understand that. We've been programmed differently for a while. So it is very helpful to have these different support programs, understanding where we're coming from, and understanding that we are a value member of the society and can contribute greatly. So on behalf of the Durham VA healthcare system, the Department of Veteran Affairs, I want to say thank you for what each and every one of you are doing to help our veterans in this mission to carry them forward. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the North Carolina Strive, the Governor's Working Group, the many VSOs. Any VSOs in the room? Hey, yeah. Many VSOs that are out there, and all of our people from Durham VA healthcare system that are here. I want to say thank you very much for what you do. Guys, go out and get those degrees, and don't forget, Department of Veteran Affairs, you got an in with us. You get a bump. You can come on in and come work for the VA. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cruz. Our next guest, again, we have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next guest who's joining us from Washington, D.C., and that is Mr. Jared Lyon, the National President and CEO of Student Veterans of America. He leads the organization's efforts to support student veterans to, through, and beyond higher education. Since his appointment in January of 2016, Jared has overseen SVA's growth to now include a network of more than 1,500 chapters on campuses in all 50 states and 4 countries, representing more than 750,000 student veterans. During his tenure, he co-authored the National Veteran Education Success Tracker Project Research, and in 2017 led SVA's commitment to pass the Forever GI Bill, the largest expansion of college aid and military veterans in a decade. Jared holds a Master of Public Administration from the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University, is the Vice Chair for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Veterans Advisory Committee on Education, a Commissioner for the American Council on Education's Commission for Education, Attainment, and Innovation, and a 2018 Presidential Leadership and Scholar, and also a veteran of the United States Navy. Welcome. Please bring up Jared.
There is a whole lot of Navy this morning, so I apologize for the lack of diversity. The past couple of weeks have taken me in and out of DC, from Nevada to Florida, and now here in North Carolina, so I suppose I have all of you to thank for keeping me out of DC for one more day. Thank you very much for that. So we've talked about anniversaries today, and it had me sort of this morning being struck by the history that exists, not only in our country, but very specifically in our veteran and military connected communities. This morning, I woke up in a hotel room that overlooked the amazing memorial that's here on campus at NC State. And I was remiss by the travels that I've had over the past 5 years in my role at SVA I've traveled to 326 college and university campuses in 48 states. I've missed Alaska and North Dakota, if you know anyone there. But something that I'm struck by when we have the conversation of the civilian-military divide is the simple notion that we are divided as a nation. When you travel to college and university campuses, there's something that people walk by every single day and just don't often notice it. It's actual war memorials. There are more war memorials on college and university campuses than you would ever know. And they're as beautiful as the one here at NC State. And when you have the chance to visit them and look at them and understand what they mean and what they represent, it helps all of those understand the sacrifices that have been made through military service for the freedoms that we all enjoy today. And most people just walk by them every single day. So when you see somebody, maybe a traditional college student walking by, point it out. Stop and smell the roses, if you will, and enjoy those memorials because they exist on college and university campuses nationwide. This month also marks another very important anniversary in the life cycle of student veterans. June marks the 75th anniversary of the GI Bill. So 75 years ago, in 1944, Congress passed what we call the Service Members Readjustment Act of 1944. And really, that original piece of legislation, we now call it the GI Bill of Rights, and we all commonly associate it with education. But that original GI Bill, we wouldn't have looked at it as purely an education benefit. In the name is readjustment. And if you ever want to truly understand legislation, follow the dollars, right? Wherever Congress places the dollars is what they're placing the biggest emphasis on within the piece of legislation. And in that original GI Bill, it had a myriad of different things in addition to education. It had farm subsidies, had the ability to start a business. It had things in there for you to be able to go to school, sure, but it also had something called the 20 and 52 Club, is really what it became known as. And what this was $20 a week for the first 52 weeks of separating from active duty. This was, we would call it unemployment compensation. And the biggest bulk of the legislation dollars allocation in that original piece of legislation were actually to unemployment compensation because that's what Congress presumed that this returning generation, 16 million women and men who were coming home from fighting in Europe and the Pacific would be the opportunity to take a knee and receive unemployment compensation when they went back to school or work or the next chapter in their lives. Well, interestingly, I'll focus a little bit on the education portion, and it almost never came to be. There was an amazing legionnaire from the American Legion by the name of Harry W. Comary, who was a former national commander of the American Legion. In the 1940s, he had this notion that the GI Bill, as a portion of readjustment from military service, should absolutely include the opportunity for an education. Now, this was a radical idea at the time. You have to go back to 1940s and understand what the landscape of America looked like. So in 1940, only 7% of adult-aged Americans actually had a college education. And unless you were a white male born to parents who went to college, there was almost no chance that you would have the opportunity for an education. So the notion that the government would pay for veterans to go back to college, it seemed almost alien as a concept. And higher education was incredibly resistant to this notion. University presidents at Harvard and Columbia and the University of Chicago published op-eds in their city newspapers, actually railing against Congress for the simple notion that they would include education for this generation coming home. Simply stated, the notion was, if you let all of these veterans, though we're grateful for their service, if you let them on college and university campuses, you will take away the opportunity for those deserving Americans who deserve to be here. Quite literally, they talked of fears of the creation of what they referred to as hobo jungles on campuses, where literally millions of veterans would flood higher education campuses, taking advantage of only the dollars to go to school and not the value in education. Well, what's really interesting about this notion is you have to understand as well that the average level of education for the service members who served in World War II was only 8th grade. So when we talked about education, it was this radical idea. And for the educators in the room, we often associate higher education legislation to the Higher Education Act of 1965. But we neglect the 20 years of history that came before with the original GI Bill. The original GI Bill democratized higher education, and it flooded America's campuses with 7.8 million, nearly 50% of the World War II generation coming to college and university campuses to achieve their education. Those same university presidents, 4 years later, published retractions in all the same publications. And they said, you know, the only problem with veterans out at my campus is they're hogging the dean's list. The university president at Harvard actually published a report 4 years on when they returned home that said that the generation of student veterans that came back to his campus were the best students in the history of Harvard. Student veterans have been succeeding in higher education for well over 75 years. But with every generation, we forget that they do well, and we always focus on the struggle. Well, I'm here today to talk to you a little bit more about how student veterans are succeeding. But another notion about how I discussed dollars as the measurement. So are there any guesses as to how many or what the percentage of World War II veterans that took advantage of the unemployment compensation after World War II? That's where Congress put the most money. They didn't think they'd go to college, half of them did. Less than 5% of the World War II generation used unemployment compensation. They came home ready to work, as every generation of veterans before us and since have. And ours is like that as well. There's two stories that I'm struck by in honor of this anniversary. The first is a gentleman by the name of Don Belfort, who separated from active duty in 1943. Eligible for the GI Bill when it passed. He was an undergraduate at George Washington University, and he worked for the school newspaper. And so he was tracking this piece of legislation, knowing that as he was struggling to take one class at a time while supporting a family and working, that this new GI Bill would open up the opportunity for him to finish his degree and actually finish it as a full-time student. So as luck would have it, after the legislation passed, he had set an appointment to meet with the Veterans Administration. It wasn't a department then. And while he was sitting in the office, the gentleman that he was meeting with, the administrator, received a phone call that basically said, hey, we're ready to start accepting applications. And as luck would have it, Don was sitting right there and overheard the conversation. The gentleman hangs up the phone and Don says, well, sir, I couldn't help it over here. The GI Bill is ready to be used now. He's like, yeah, it is, but I mean, you know, what are the odds that you actually have your discharge papers with you? He said, as a matter of fact. So Don, having served in the Army, was prepared when he sat there, and Don was actually the first recipient of the original GI Bill 23 hours after it opened up. Talk about processing times, right? So for Don, I was able to have the chance last week during a ceremony with the Secretary of VA, Secretary Robert Wilkie, to meet Don's family. And Don's family shared with me what Don was involved with on campus, and I think it's very indicative of how student veterans perform today. We're leaders on campus. So I already mentioned he was part of the school newspaper, but he was also a member of the drama club, Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society. He was a member of the Student Government Association and active with his on-campus student veteran organization. His entire family is all college educated, and no one in Don's family had ever gone to college before him on the GI Bill. And that's like many in my generation. 63% of us are first-generation college students, just like me. The GI Bill opens up that opportunity for college education. But Don had something that he used to almost beat into his family every day. It's probably not the right way to describe your family, but it's a notion that held true. And think back to Don sitting with that administrator already having his paperwork. He said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, so always be prepared. His family embraced that. The second is a story that is uniquely personal to me. And it's about somebody that we probably all know the name of, George H.W. Bush. Veteran of the United States Navy at the time. He was the youngest naval aviator in history when he earned his wings. He earned a degree in economics from Yale. You probably know this story, but George H.W. Bush went out on a mission in his aircraft that many aviators of his day named. It was Barbara 3. And the reason is because his first two aircraft, one crashed in training, the other shot down an enemy fire. It was a dangerous job. So out on Barbara 3, it was a crew of 3, so a pilot and 2 crew members. George H.W. Bush's plane was shot down. He completed his bombing run and then moved towards the ocean. They knew that aviators that were shot down over land didn't have a long survivability rate. So if you were ever going to be shot down in the Pacific, go down over water. So as he instructed his crew to bail out, he flew as far as he could to destroy the plane and then bailed out himself. His other 2 crew members perished in that ocean. And as he fell to the ocean with a parachute, there was a Japanese destroyer that caught the view of him. and they turned off mission to go towards him. Now, George H.W. Bush, as he fell into the ocean, a 20-year-old Navy officer, he saw that destroyer barreling down on him and he knew his fate. He saw that land was too far away to make a swim for, so he tried to make his peace with his God. And out of nowhere emerges a submarine out of the ocean. Thank God it's US. They grabbed him with a fish hook and then submerged and suffered death charges for over 10 hours after that. They saved George H.W. Bush's life. Now, he thought they would just take him back to land and get in another plane and keep going. He was on station for over a month after that with the submarine. They had to finish their mission. Later, that Japanese destroyer commander was interviewed as George H.W. Bush came to public prominence. And he said, you know, I remember that because I saw one single parachute floating down in the ocean. And we went towards it as you would during a time of war. And I didn't know it was George H.W. Bush. I didn't know that was a future president of the United States. But what I do remember distinctively is that was the day I knew that we had lost the war. Because a submarine came off station. And when a submarine does that, it quite literally gives up its location, it gives up its security and its safety. The silent service survives on stealth. So when they identified themselves for one American pilot, that Japanese destroyer commander is recalled as saying, you know, in Japan, if that had been a Japanese aviator, we would have continued with the mission and bemoaned his loss, but we wouldn't have gone and captured and retrieved him. But one submarine with a crew of over 80 risked their lives to save one American. And that was the day that I knew that we had lost the war, because America is as big as its citizens, and we'll risk ourselves even just for one American. So I think about that story and note that it unites us. I've met 5 United States presidents in my life, and I've had the chance to meet George H.W. Bush before he passed last year. And he coined me. And on the back of his challenge coin is the notion of what he did in public service. United States Congress, ambassador to the UN, he was director of the CIA, vice president of the United States, and president. But I go all the way back to him being an original GI Bill user, and I've seen his original GI Bill paperwork at his library in College Station. And so I was able to pull what he was involved in when he was on campus to strike home this notion as to how student veterans are. So before he was ever president, he was a father while he was on campus, so going back to school, a couple of kids, one would grow up to become president of the United States himself. Barbara, his sweetheart, he had married, so he was married when he was back on campus. 52% of veterans in school today are married with children. 19% of us are single parents. But he was also president of his fraternity while he was a student veteran. He was captain of the Yale baseball team and played in the first 2 College World Series as a student veteran, also having the chance to meet Babe Ruth just a few months before he passed away. He was a member of the Yale cheerleading squad, he was elected to Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society, and he was active in his on-campus student veteran organization. Veterans have been succeeding in higher education for a long time, and inscribed on President Bush's challenge coin is the notion that any definition of a successful life must include service to others. My generation, the post-9/11 generation of veterans, has served others. And World War II veterans are the giants in which my generation stands upon their shoulders. But we still have this notion by some leaders in higher education that, gee, thank you for your service, but let's be honest. If these student veterans of today were smart enough to get into college, how'd they ever wind up in the military? I hear that as I travel around the country, and it's simply false. And so being in Washington, D.C., we advocate as the voice for veterans in higher education. And this year, one of our top legislative priorities is to provide a voice for our nation's student veterans as a significant component of the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. We'll continue to be outspoken advocates on the following issues related to the reauthorization. First, incorporating Department of Veterans Affairs and Department of Defense education resources as federal funds applying to the rule to all institutions of higher learning. The 90-10 loophole has been abused long enough, and in our opinion, it's important this change is a major check on the quality of these institutions. Second, simplifying the processes for federal education benefits such as FAFSA and student loan payment options, with the caveat that simplification must not come at the expense of access to resources for student veterans and their family members. Third is maintaining key student protections such as borrower's defense to repayment and gainful employment, such that serve as important gatekeepers of federal student aid and loans, protecting taxpayers and students alike. Fourth is creating efficiencies through greater government collaboration and automatic enrollment in benefits aimed at reducing student debt. And finally, establishing greater oversight on nonprofit conversions to address a regulatory weakness at the IRS and the Department of Education. This changing tax status is the latest trend in bad actor schools, and they're using it to avoid playing by the rules, and that's just wrong. As a higher education nonprofit, Student Veterans of America is a bit different in some ways. It's important to recognize that the VA's education benefits only actually impact a fraction of the legislation and regulation that touch the educational opportunities, choices, and protections that impact student veterans. As leading veteran advocates for this important population of students, we engage a wide variety of policymakers to help them recognize how the Higher Education Act legislative process directly impacts millions of veterans. In 2017, as was mentioned earlier, the 115th Congress unanimously passed Forever GI Bill, establishing education as a right of service, no longer as an otherwise short-sighted cost of war. Another policy priority for this year is the continued oversight and implementation of this law. And as we start looking at how student veterans are performing, they're performing markedly well. The research that was mentioned that we've done earlier was actually in partnership with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Student Veterans of America is the only public-private partnership in the country to study not only the efficacy of the GI Bill, but the overall success of this generation of students. As I travel around the country, I continue to hear myth and misperception that seems to pervade about how the contemporary student veteran is performing in post-secondary education. So I'd like to share with you a little bit of insight in what we've learned studying 1.854 million individual veterans to utilize the GI Bill. The first misconception about veterans is that we're not actually going to go to college very much. Sound familiar to the World War II generation? With the GI Bill, you can transfer it to your dependents, and so most assume that many veterans would transfer the GI Bill to our dependents. There's less than 72,000 dependents using the GI Bill and over 900,000 veterans using the GI Bill, so those scales don't even tip. The next assumption is that, well, veterans have the opportunity to use their GI Bill for any type of education and training, to include vocational training and certificate-based training. Well, since 2009, less than 5% of veterans have ever done that. 95% of us have pursued post-secondary education with the GI Bill. The next assumption is that we must all only assume to go to community college because many are like me, enlisted veterans. And since most likely we didn't go to college before we served, we might not choose to go to a 4-year college. This is where the data gets a little bit funky. So essentially what we know is about 67% of veterans that graduate with a 4-year degree start at community college. That said, the majority of us are not graduating from community college. That's not a bad thing necessarily if we're matriculating into a 4-year degree and ultimately on to grad school. And what's difficult further is that many veterans are no longer using their GI Bill at community college. And there's a reason for that. We've done the math. Thanks to great state legislation, community college credits are incredibly affordable. So we're paying out of pocket for those credits, preserving our GI Bill to finish a 2-year, transfer to then finish a 4-year, and have extra GI Bill left over for graduate school. That is becoming more and more common. So the next association is, well, okay, if most veterans are going to 4-year and graduate schools, and if you look at the GI Bill, here's how the degrees stack up, earned on the GI Bill. And I think that's important, earned. Not aspired to, not pursuing, but completed. So earned on the GI Bill, the #1 degree earned using GI Bill benefits is a bachelor's degree, followed by a master's degree, then an associate's degree, and then a terminal degree such as a JD, PhD, MD, and the like. And 90% of the veterans that have used that benefit are just like me, enlisted. 1% warrant officers and about 9% commissioned officers. So if you think about it, the degrees held by veterans, most, are actually enlisted veterans. Now, officers definitely have their degrees before they come in, but there's just more enlisted veterans and more of us go to college, so the numbers stack up that way. Well, the next association is, okay, if they're going to 4-year and graduate schools, I hear that they're all a bunch of underwater basket weaving majors. They're not pursuing academically rigorous degrees. What couldn't be further from the truth? The first notion that I'm going to make is a tie back to World War II. So we've been able to figure out what the top 3 majors were for veterans that used the GI Bill, that original GI Bill over 75 years ago. In this order, they were business, science, engineering, math, and health-related fields. It was recently stated that if it weren't for the original GI Bill, we wouldn't have had enough engineers and scientists and mathematicians to put a man on the moon. Think about the impact that that bill had. Well, now what are the top 3 majors for our generation, the post 9/11 era veterans? In this order, they are business, science, technology, engineering, math, and health-related fields. It's the same. What we also know is that the majority of veterans, when they separate from active duty, wind up doing a job that is totally different from what they did in the military. Because they're going to school, earning an education, and they're not going to college to find themselves. We leave that to high school kids. Ours is a generation going to college to create ourselves through the transformative power of higher education and set ourselves up for success when we graduate. So how are we performing? Well, the easiest measure for this is the GPA. The nationwide GPA in America, and I'll be generous and round it up, it's a 3.1 for all students in a post-secondary degree program. For veterans right now, it's a 3.35. We are outperforming our civilian counterparts. And the last myth that we hear so regularly, well, even if that's all true, they're struggling, man. They're not graduating. Okay. So the nationwide success rate in America for all post-secondary education students, meaning do you start college, do you ultimately graduate with a degree, is 68%, and that's respectable. But it wouldn't be good enough for veterans. We're currently at 74%. So by any measure, today's student veterans are not only outperforming our civilian peers, we're thriving in higher education. And when we graduate, we have lower unemployment rates and higher earned income. Right now, a veteran with a bachelor's degree on average is earning $17,000 more per annum than our civilian counterparts who have never served. And with a master's degree, we earn $29,000 more. And with degrees in the most academically rigorous fields, they're also the most marketable fields. And they're filling critical skills gaps that America's students right now are not pursuing, if not for veterans. So I ask all of us, what is our mission to the moon? Because America's veterans today are going to solve the complex problems of tomorrow. And no matter how divisive we feel as a country, those that have worn the cloth of our nation possess an inherent leadership. And I'm not here to purport that my generation isn't without our challenges or struggles, but in the face of all of them is resilience. And when you look at the aggregated national data, my generation is outperforming nearly any generation that has come before. So if you think back to that World War II generation, we call them the greatest generation. Well, know that we didn't start calling them that until 1998, when Tom Brokaw wrote a book by the same title. Prior to 1998, we called them the GI generation because of the GIs that they were called when they served, and the sheer percentage of them that did, and the GI Bill that was ushered in to help support them when they came home. And though I would not argue one iota, they are certainly the greatest generation and earned that moniker. If you think about it hard, they didn't earn that until 53 years after they came home. And rightfully so, we want to see how they performed. But about 50% of them went to college. Over 77% of the post 9/11 era has completed already an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree or higher. We are not only beating the World War II generation, we are the most educated subsect of any generation of veterans that have served or any subsect of American citizens. Ours, the post 9/11 era of generation of student veterans that are on campuses right now, are not only succeeding, they're thriving. And with the leadership that they learned in the military, the education that they've earned with the most generous benefit for higher education period, they're succeeding in the classrooms, they're volunteering on campus, they're making their communities better, and they are going on to perhaps earn the title, the next greatest generation. I thank you all for being here. I can't wait to connect with some of you during the breakout sessions. Thank you for committing yourselves to student veteran success, because this is the generation that will solve the problems that ail us. Thank you so very much.
Outstanding. please get another round of applause for all our future speakers today. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, with that said, that's going to conclude the opening session. So at this point, I think we have about 11 minutes.